Hi, everyone. I am going to share my screen. So excited to get into this next module with you guys. This one just feels, I could tear up a little bit. It just feels so good spiritually. So what we covered in that first container really allows us to look at mental health diagnosis through a metabolic standpoint. So really seeing that symptom, right, on a cellular level. And then there was this invitation to really see that cellular level as as an opening to us seeing ourselves in a much um, greater greater lens than we've ever really seen ourselves before. And so what this container is going to go over is the Kabbalion. And so I'm actually using, and I'm scanning because I don't see the book in front of me, but I will find it and put that link somewhere. The original Kabbalion is in the Google Drive for everyone. What I will be quoting and referencing throughout the slides is the Three Initiatives smaller version. It's probably like 150 pages. I would recommend for those taking this course, read the original Kabbalion as you do this. And if you want to get that one to reference the quotes that I share, you are absolutely welcome to. But the quotes that I share are also in the Kabbalion. It's just the page number that I have for the slides, excuse me, will not translate to the original, the original one. So just wanted to emphasize that. But we're going to go over the Hermetic teachings. We'll kind of explain a lot of those pieces today. And yeah, we're gonna start just with an overview. The way that this class is going to be structured for the 7 weeks, rather than having individual learning lab and tapping groups, we're going to combine them together. So these courses are going to be a little bit longer in length, but we're going to do the teaching component. We'll go into the tapping, and then we will do a group share. The group share, I probably won't, I'm not going to record. So save whatever time after to let yourself just really digest, right? If you're watching the replay. If you do want to speak upon the things, because sometimes speaking upon it is helpful in the embodiment of it, go back and use the rest of the time after to, read to yourself whatever it is you transcribed in the session. So that will be my recommendation. But for this first week, let's get started. So we're just going to start with an overview. Language is always fun for me. Before we hop into that, this is one of the first quotes in the book. The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. A lot of what we're going to go into with this is deeply spiritual. It's deeply philosophical. Just let yourself fully receive it. You'll hear me bring this up again in another slide. Um, if at any point you want to pause the video to, sit with any of these quotes or any of these learnings, please do. Even going back multiple times, right? Because each time you watch this, you're going to get something different, is my hope. Because the embodiment of these teachings is not like oh, got it. I mean, I've read this thing probably like 4 or 5 times at least. And every time I do, I'm still taking things away on just a deeper, you know, inner wisdom aspect. So we start with this because those that are here are literally ready to hear. And so with that, I invite for each principle, some of these things may challenge some, constructs that you already have. For each principle, at least in practice, as you listen to these recordings, allow yourself to believe it to be true 100%, even if it's just for while you listen to this recording. This course is not designed to challenge these principles. It is designed to connect to them. If we are challenging them, we aren't even going to make it past the first one. And so ultimately, one of the things that I spoke on in that last cohort, the 9 weeks, was believing in this innate wisdom of the human vessel that we live in, right? This retrieval and ability to remember innate wisdom, and even just when our body expresses itself in whatever way it does, the innate beauty in that. And so if we can believe in that innate wisdom and the remembrance that we are always healing, which is why we are here, we're going to be able to see ourselves as nature. And I'm going to move the little picture of me down here just in case you guys can't see the actual definition of nature. I love etymology, so you'll see this a couple times throughout our time together in various ways. But nature, the restorative powers of the body, bodily processes, powers of growth, nature being principle of life, character, essence. We kind of go down natural character, constitution, quality, the universe. Literally birth, born to be born. I want you all to just kind of stop for a moment and close the eyes. And as you feel into the field of this container and you invite in the remembering of yourself as nature, just notice what you feel in your heart right now. Maybe there's a soft opening. Maybe there's like a, yes, thank God. Maybe there's a part that's like, whoa, what? And all of it is welcome, right? There is no right or wrong in this. As we meet the various parts that come up through this learning, we'll meet other parts through tapping. And my hope is, that these seven principles, as we go over them over the course of these 7 weeks, will actually be things that allow pieces that have been fragmented or I don't have a word for this, but this to be able to come together with each other. Oh, there we go. The purpose of this work is not the enunciation of any special philosophy or doctrine, but rather is to give to students a statement of the truth that will serve to reconcile the many bits of occult knowledge that they may have acquired, but which are apparently opposed to each other, and which often serve to discourage and disgust the beginner in the study. Our intent is not to erect a new temple of knowledge, but rather to place in the hands of the student a master key with which he may open the many inner doors in the temple of mystery through the main portals he has already entered. This work is very, it's inner work, right? The embodiment of these things is not the knowledge and, the knowing of something. It's the application of something. Want you just to kind of sit in that heart space again, right? With those inner doors and the temple of mystery and the remembrance that each of you individually and collectively get to experience when you listen to these downloads and transmissions. I'm going to go over just the bold lettered language real fast. Enunciation is the speaking of something. If you go into, I believe I covered this in the office hours, which will be week 1 and the last course, when we look at words and sounds, right? What we speak carries its own frequency. It carries its own initiation into something. And so what they're saying here is this work is not to, speak upon one specific philosophy or doctrine, but it is to give students a statement of truth. And I use that word a lot in my practice as well. What is true, right? Not from an egoic standpoint, but literally what is true. Occult people tend to get afraid of, it just means hidden. That's it. So if we shift that language, excuse me, this is to give students a statement of truth that will serve to reconcile the many bits of hidden knowledge that they may have acquired, but which are apparently opposed to each other and which often serve to discourage and disgust the beginner in the study. So what I was speaking about this to this, right? This knowledge, this wisdom is going to let these acquired pieces of information and truth that we know or don't know, but will soon know, to come together and allow us to live in a very different way. We're just going to do a little etymology. If you remember that first slide, embodied principles. Embodied means in reference to a soul or spirit, invest with an animate form, express, arrange, or exemplify intelligence or perceptibility. You'll see this in relationship to the words embodied, embodying, and principle. I ended up changing it, and I'll explain why in a moment. Original source, beginning, rule of conduct, axiom, basic assumption, elemental aspect of a craft or discipline. Keep scrolling. A beginning, a commencement, and a origin, a first part. I originally titled this Embodied Education. And when I looked up the word education, and I'll share this, I had a little note down here, but I'll share this in the slides. It literally means to teach an animal. And you will see next week when we get into the law of correspondence of various planes, the difference in the animal plane versus the human plane. And so when I read that, I took it out instantly because there is it's not a judgment or a differentiation, but for us to connect with these things, we have to be conscious of the language that we use. And so the first principle that we're going to cover today is the principle of mentalism. One of the main quotes in the Kabbalion for this principle is the all is mind, the universe is mental. What does that mean? This is going to be a quote from the Kabbalion. Again, I'm referencing the Initiatives book. So this is on page 9, but this isn't it. This principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the substantial reality underlying all the outward manifestations and appearances, which we know under the terms of the material universe, the phenomena of life, matter, energy. In short, all that is apparent to our material senses is spirit, which in itself is unknowable and undefinable, but may be considered and thought of as the universal, infinite, living mind. It also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of created things, and that the universe as a whole and in its parts or units has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. I know there's a lot to digest. So if you want to take a moment and pause the video and read through that, go ahead. We're going to break these pieces down here. Again, this is probably going to be a series that you'll want to read and digest a couple times, particularly as you read the Kabbalion if you haven't yet. And I do want to say that this week and next week, so next week we're going to cover the principle of correspondence. Part of the universe is mental is going to be next week as well. So by the end of today, you may have some questions. And honestly, at the end of every week, you may have questions. And that's beautiful. And I invite those. And some of those questions may be answered the next week and the next week. And we're just going to pull all of these threads in together because all of the laws exist all the time together. And so as we break them down individually, there are going to be parts that I don't necessarily want to touch on or introduce until we get to that week, but by the end, you will see how it all comes together. And so in understanding the law that we just spoke on, right, there are a couple pieces that I want to talk about here. So what it's essentially saying is our reality is mind created, meaning everything in the physical material world starts as an idea, a thought, or a mental image in the invisible realm. The outside world acts as a mirror for our inner consciousness. This is part of, if you've already read the Kabbalion, the law of correspondence. Again, we will get into what that actually means next week. But if for now you can just hold that what we experience, what our reality is part mirrored of our inner consciousness. And it starts as an idea, a thought, or a mental image. Hold that. You're good. Another piece to discuss here, cause and effect. This cause and effect is going to be spoken about just a little differently in the way that I've spoken about cause and effect. But ultimately what it's saying is the mental realm is the realm of cause and the physical realm is the realm of effect, right? So what we think is the cause of the physical realm that we experience. To change your life, you must change your underlying thoughts and beliefs rather than just trying to manipulate your external circumstances. So if you go back to week 7 and week 8 of that 9-week course, week 7 was looking at the body as energy. right? Which we will cover very briefly today. Week 8 was looking at our thoughts as inputs. And so when we change not even just the surface thoughts, but really these deeper belief system, these perceptions, right? If you think about a tree, the roots of the tree are literally the same depth as the height of the tree because it has to hold it up, right? We see these trees sway in the winds and the trunks are just so sturdy and impenetrable. And the reason for that is because they go just as deep underground, right? So if you just kind of, again, rather than, above and below, but I guess you could think above and below in that way. If we change our thoughts, we're going to change the experience that we have. And then the final thing to consider, connection to the all. The all, as we go through this, is not the universe. You may see language such as universal mind, right? But the actual universe, you will see as we go, a separation between the two. Again, this is not to impose any religious doctrine at all. This can be, you can refer to the all as anything. I just want to make that separation known because sometimes we use universe and source. And I just want to acknowledge that we will be using the word universe in a different way here. As far as like galaxy universe, like what's actually been, created. So with this connection to the all, individual human minds are viewed as extensions or parts of a single, infinite, universal mind. Because the universe itself is mental, you can influence reality using focused thought, intention, and emotional conviction. We will get into some frequency pieces in a little bit because there are some things that we need to know about the universe in order to even understand these three foundational realities here. Before we get to that, though, just another quote. Mind, right? So the all is mind. Mind, as well as metals and elements, spirit, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. True hermetic transmutation is a mental act. Mind, the all universe, you're going to see various forms of those words. So as we go, I will do my best to emphasize which one we are speaking to directly. So for the sake of this, mind, right? Creation or mind, thought, right? Maybe as well as metals and elements can be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. And this act of transmutation is a mental act. I want to cover what transmutation actually entails because that is a word that is very easy to, kind of throw out the window, right? Like, okay. And so a lot of these concepts I do want to ground with science to highlight and show, right, where we see this literally in everyday life. Um, I'm going to use the word in nature because I'm looking outside at nature, even though that definition of nature that we just covered, right, is bodily process growth, right? We see that happening literally outside all the time. So just going back to that notion of transmutation and a lot of what we are studying here, comes back to the Hermetists, and they were the original alchemists, astrologists, psychologists. Hermes being the founder of these schools, and the ancients possessed a knowledge of all of these different fields, right, through a transcendental lens. So transcendental astronomy, we now call astrology. Transcendental chemistry, we call alchemy. Transcendental psychology, we call mystic psychology. I apologize, it's the back. As far as what we call it now, what it was called then, excuse me. They possess the inner knowledge as well as the outer knowledge, the latter alone being possessed only by modern scientists. Among the many secret branches of knowledge possessed by the Hermetists was that known as mental transmutation, which forms the subject matter of this lesson. So that quote, this whole quote is from the Kybalion. Transmutation is a term usually employed to designate the ancient art of the transmutation of metals, particularly base metals, into gold. I forget the king that did that. I mean, I'll have to look that up, but as I say that, right, I remember there being the story, King Midas, there we go. Everything he touched turned to gold, right? That's transmutation. However, the word transmute literally means to change from one nature, form, substance into another. And so mental transmutation is going to be the art of changing and transforming mental states, forms, and conditions into others. And so mental transmutation is the art of mental chemistry. And we see this transmutation in a number of different ways because it literally happens every single day around us, right? So this changing of something into something else. We see it in nature, right? A seed becoming a tree, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, a leaf breaking down and becoming soil, sunlight becoming plant matter through photosynthesis, right? All of these processes are not only innate, but they move a form into another form, right? So we see this shift happen naturally all the time. And that shift happens within the innate knowledge of the thing itself. We see it in our own body when breath becomes fuel and energy, right? The oxygen required to form ATP, that's going to be all the stuff that we covered in week 2. When we see cells die and regenerate, that's what happens at night and why our circadian rhythm is so important, right? We have to be able to provide that detoxification and waste of our body so that it can regenerate. We don't have to think about doing it. It's a process that naturally happens while we sleep, right? Which is if you go into week 9 and even week 2 and 3 on light, there's so much around circadian rhythm and why we sit in darkness, why we sit with evening sunlight because of the processes that that light informs our body of. Neural pathways change through repetition. I put for better or worse because depending on, you know, what your goal is or what you're doing, right? That uh repeated action of something is going to make that neural pathway respond accordingly, right? So whether that is the stress response cycle, whether that is the food we intake, whether that's the light we take in, it's also the things we don't do, right? And so we see all of that innate knowledge based on what is being given and how we move through that, right? Even similarly, we see emotions transmute, right? Emotions carry messages. This nervous system is going to be able to transmute environment senses, even just move information in our body into literal action. And we've talked about that in, I think, weeks 2, 8, and potentially 9 as well. So we see in the body, right, all these ways that we actually have the ability to transmute. I believe we talk about this in week 7, and I want to, beginning of week 8, and I want to elaborate on these pieces a little more because as I read the Kabbalion and put this together, I saw something in a very different light. So the first law of thermodynamics, states that energy can change forms, but it is neither created nor destroyed. So again, when we look at transmutation, right, we actually see this first law of thermodynamics stating exactly that transmutation is possible, right? Total energy is going to equal output, right? Whatever starts is going to shift into something else. Again, we can see that even metabolically, in our body in a variety of different ways. Everything we covered in that last slide and so much more. So, as you kind of, yeah, digest this stuff, if you need to take a time and pause, please do, because this stuff can be, I want you to sit with the ahas when you feel that ping, because these messages that we get are just so potent. But I referenced this and that, where we went over it in that week because we're going to talk about systems again. And in order for this to be true, it requires a container and a certain type of specific container. So when we look at systems, I'm not speaking about um, mechanical functional systems like AI and automated pieces, although I guess if you really wanted to get philosophical, we could break that stuff down in these. But you're basically going to have three different types of systems. When we are looking at energy, we're going to have open systems where matter and energy are exchanged with their surroundings, meaning boiling water becomes vapor, right? Even our metabolic systems are considered open because we're exchanging all kinds of things, food, oxygen, light, right? There's this interface of our body and things around us. We have closed systems, excuse me, where matter is not exchanged with the surroundings, but energy is. So if you think about like a water bottle that has a cap on, right? Matter, the actual water, is not coming out of the container, but heat or light is being exchanged. And then we have isolated systems where neither are. This will come back into play because one of the things that we have to hold and know about the all is that it is isolated. So I want to go over into some things that we must know about the all in order to really apply this first principle. So again, these are going to be quotes, but we'll pull the three main pieces out at the end. We accept and teach the view of the great Hermetic thinkers of all times, as well as those illumined souls who have reached higher planes of being, both of whom assert that the inner nature of the all is unknowable. This must be so, for not by the all itself can comprehend its own nature and being. So the all must be unknowable. There must be parts about it that we just have to accept that we're not going to know. Again, the Hermetists believe and teach that the all in itself is and must ever be unknowable. I'm going to add these next pieces in just for differentiation because A, they're in the book and I think they are significantly important. But it's so interesting as we read these next quotes, just how our mind, right, has put and personalized different experiences in our lives. And they regard all the theories, guesses, and speculations of the theologians and metaphysicians regarding the inner nature of the all as but the childish effort of mortal minds to grasp the secret of the infinite. And still, more presumptuous are those who attempt to ascribe to the all personality, qualities, properties, characteristics, and attributes of themselves, ascribing the all to human emotions, feelings, characteristics, and even down to the pettiest qualities of mankind, such as jealousy, susceptibility to flattery and praise, desire for offerings and worships, and all other survival from the days of the childhood of the race. I want you just to pause and take those pieces in. Because again, when we start interacting with something, thinking that it is something, right? We make it something. And what if the thing we made it is not what it actually is? And I'm not just speaking about this in reference to the all, I'm speaking about this to ever everything. Sorry, the face I'm making right now is because one of the quotes is the all capitals is in all, and all is in the all capitals. And so even just in that reference, there's a lot there. But while the essential nature of the all is unknowable, there are certain truths connected with its existence, which the human mind finds itself compelled to accept. And to this inquiry, we now invite you. So the all is unknowable. The all must be all that really is. There can be nothing existing outside of the all, else the all would not be the all. So I go back to that discussion that we briefly had on the systems, because the all, as we see this in language, this means that it's an isolated system. There's nothing that exists outside of it. So even if you think about, right, Earth, there are plenty of things that exist outside of Earth in this galaxy, right? So maybe you're like, oh, the all is this galaxy, but there are other galaxies, right? And outside of those galaxies, there are other galaxies, and there are more, and there are more. All of those are containers, right? All of those are things outside of something where those systems can operate. What we're saying here is that nothing exists outside of it at all. Therefore, it is isolated. as far as a isolated system where energy can then be transmuted. Second, the all must be infinite, for there is nothing else to define, confine, bound, limit, or restrict the all. It must be infinite in time or eternal. It must have always continuously existed, for there is nothing else to have created it, and something can never evolve from nothing. And if it had ever not been, even for a moment, it would not be now. It must continually exist forever, for there is nothing to destroy it, and it can never not be, even for a moment, because something can never become nothing. For those that are watching the replay, pause and read that again, because again, these quotes have so many different layers in it, and we'll reference as we build on the principles, right? So we'll talk about this in all the other weeks as well. But I want you just to I invite you to feel what stirs inside of you today as you read these. It must be infinite in space. It must be everywhere, for there is no place outside of the all. Again, isolated container. It cannot be otherwise, for continuous in space without break, cessation, separation, or interruption, for there is nothing to break, separate, or interrupt its continuity, and nothing with which to fill in the gaps. It must be infinite in power or absolute, for there is nothing to limit, restrict, restrain, confine, disturb, or condition it. It is subject to no other power, for there is no other power. When we get to the law of correspondence, these quotes are next week. I'm sorry, the principle of correspondence, not the law of correspondence. We'll get into etymology around the word law too. These are going to come back because you're going to see a deeper invitation in the embodiment of these principles. So we have the all is unknowable. It is infinite. There is nothing else existing. It is entirely in itself. 3, the all must be immutable or not subject to change in its real nature, for there is nothing to work changes upon it. Again, isolated container. Nothing into which it could have changed, not from which it could have changed. It cannot be added to nor subtracted from, increased nor diminished, not become greater or less than in any respect whatsoever. It must have always been and must always remain just what it is now, the all. There has never been, is not now, and will never be anything else into which it can change. So we have these 3. The all must be all that really is, it must be infinite, and it must be immutable. So it must exist everywhere. Nothing to define, confine, bound, limit, restrict. Nothing to work changes upon. Can't be subtracted from, can't become greater than or less than in any respect. I'm so excited for next week, guys. Sorry, I'm so excited. I'm excited for now, but just as I read that, the things that came in, if you've read the Kabbalion, the thing I will leave you is the law of correspondence, right? As within, as without. In order for us to see that, what does that mirror in our inner consciousness? And we'll cover that more next week. We see around just act, which is called matter, right? So this goes on because what we're going to do over these next couple slides is reinforce this notion that the all is spirit. So we see around just act, which is called matter, which forms the physical foundation for all forms. And so the question is the all merely matter? Again, what must we understand about the all in order to really digest that all is mind and the universe is a mental creation? So we're just kind of starting to lay the roadmaps. And again, some of these words and things are very deep. So if you need to pause and pause the video, say them a couple times, sit with them. And as we keep going week by week, if you have not read the Kabbalion already, will make great sense as we go. Matter cannot manifest life or mind, and as life and mind are manifested in the all cannot be matter, for nothing rises higher than its own source. Nothing is ever manifested in an effect that is not the cause. I want to pause there for a minute. Nothing is ever manifested in an effect that is not the cause. We will get into cause and effect in one of the weeks. I don't remember which one. But I just invite you to really consider the language of that when we look at cause and effect. Nothing is as evolved as a consequence that is not involved as an antecedent, right? So whatever is the outcome is also going to be at the beginning. And again, today we're setting the stage to begin to be able to understand the all, so we can look at that principle of mentalism, right? And begin to see that the all is mind and the universe is a mental construct, meaning the way that we perceive is how we exchange and interact with our reality. And so when we understand this law, right, we get to work with, and all the components, I'm sorry, when we understand this principle and the components of this principle, we get to work with how we show up each day. And that is where we're going to do some tapping shortly to kind of be with the embodiment of that. And so I just want to kind of get into matter real fast. We didn't necessarily cover this in the last module, but we did from the Earth's electromagnetic field aspect. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. And basically all matter is made up of fundamental building blocks called atoms. And atoms are going to have both electric and magnetic fields because the atoms are made of charged subatomic protons or particles, excuse me, called protons and electrons. They're going to be in constant motion. So if you go back to week 7, we talk about our body, right, as a living, breathing life force energy. We talk about even the earth being a living, breathing life force energy. We see, right, that electromagnetic frequency of the earth being the same ratio as in respect to the size of the earth, and our electromagnetic frequency being in ratio the same size to us and our physical body. And so everything that is living and even material, right, is built entirely from these electrical charged particles, protons, and electrons. And so the all cannot be matter. So I just want to break this down. I wanted to break matter down because we see matter everywhere. Then is the all mere energy or force? Not energy or force, as the materialists use the term, for their energy and force are blind, mechanical things devoid of life or mind, right? So when we think about energy and force, there's not this invitation of spirit, right, to come into it. It's a material, right, a concrete object. And I'm knocking on the table that my laptop is on, right? There's a void of life or mind in the item itself. Life and mind can never evolve from blind energy or force for the reason given a moment ago. Nothing can rise higher than its source. Nothing is evolved unless it is involved. Nothing manifests in the effect unless it is in the cause. So the all cannot be energy or force, for if it were, then there would be no such thing as life and mind in existence. And we know better than that, for we are alive and using mind to consider this very question. What is there then higher than matter or energy that we know to be existent in the universe? Life and mind. So life and mind in their varying degrees of unfoldment. Do you mean to tell us that the all is life and mind? Yes and no is our answer. If you mean life and mind as we, and this is from the book, we poor petty mortals know them, we say no. But what kind of life and mind do you mean, you ask? We mean that which the illumined souls mean when they reverently pronounce the word spirit. So again, we go back to this invitation of the all being spirit. And something that we've talked a lot about as well, right, is us as spirit, right? Our soul, this living, breathing life force energy. And when we get into next week, like I said, that law of correspondence, we're going to be able to tie a lot of these loose anchorings together just for the sake of time today. We're not going to be able to double down on 2 principles today, but I wanted to just go into the etymology of the word spirit before we go into our tapping for today. The etymology of the word spirit means life, the animating or vital principle in man and animals, spirit, soul, a breathing breath of God, life itself. in English is attested from the late 14th century as divine substance, divine mind, God, Christ, his divine nature, Holy Ghost, divine power. The soul is the seat of mortality in man, extension of divine power to man. And so again, the first principle, right, is the principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. We learned today about what the all is, the fundamental aspects of how we have to view the all in order to interact with it and understand this principle and then be able to use it in our understanding of it. So again, there might be some questions, and when we get to the law of correspondence, I promise that that mirroring is going to play a huge role in that perception of how we create. But we also covered, right, the ability to transmute, how we see that everywhere in our world, right? It is literally something that exists all around us. And I invite you to start seeing that every single day, right? Whether something can be true and we don't need to know it. And if we don't know it, it doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? The truth of it is it's always happening. It's always there. It's always doing its thing, whether we choose to see it or not. And so my invitation, and there will be some embodiment principles as we finish and close our tapping that I'll invite you to. But begin to notice where you see it in your day, write it down, begin to notice where you see it in your body, write it down. If you guys remember the work of Nikola Tesla, this quote might take on a very different meaning now. And if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so with that, before we go into tapping, Gilly, do you have any questions about anything we covered? Take your silence as a no. Cool. I don't have the chat open, so if you put something in the chat, I can't see it. I apologize. So we're gonna go into tapping now. So if you don't have a pen and paper, go ahead and grab a pen and paper. The way that we do some tapping, I'm gonna do a little model demonstration and then just kind of explain the pieces. So the intention for our tapping immersion today is I'm an active participant in the creation of my experience, right? That's the law of mentalism. I'm an active participant in the creation of my experience. If there is a different intention you want to set based on what landed for you in that lesson, by all means, please go for it. If not, use this one. Go ahead and write that down. I want you just to take a moment or two to answer those two questions after you write down that intention. I'm an active participant in the creation of my experience. Go ahead and write out that question. What am I creating? Take a moment. We're going to free write, just do some automatic writing. What are you creating? Maybe that is, wow, the first word I was going to say is business. And I'm going to have to do some own reflection on that one there. Maybe it's something business related. Maybe it's a practice that you're doing for yourself. Maybe it's a ritual you're creating within your family. Maybe it's a new way of living, right? What is it that you're creating? What's the life you want to experience? And then after you have written what you are creating, I want you to go ahead and write out what image represents this. And then put that image, or you can put image and then hyphen, however you want to do it. But based on what you wrote for that, what am I creating? I want you to ask and write down what image represents this, because that's going to be the image that we start with when we go into tapping. So what image represents what you are creating? I'm going to go ahead and just do a little demo of the tapping. We're going to close the eyes down. We'll do a little breath work and drop in before we start, but eyes will be closed as we go into tapping. You're going to keep your eyes open to watch me, but we'll have the eyes closed. We'll cross the arms and you'll go into a set of drumming on your shoulders, okay? You're going to hear me say the word notice or observe, and that basically just means hold in your awareness, hold with your intention. It doesn't mean we're thinking on something and trying to force and make an outcome happen or get to a conclusion as fast as we can. It literally means we are sitting in reverence of and watching something happen and unfold before us. So we are receiving information. We are with something that is going to transmute, and we want to be present and watch that transmutation happen, knowing that that transmutation is literally existing in everything and everywhere. So it is going to exist in whatever information comes up. You do not need to make anything happen in this process. And that can be really challenging sometimes, right? So if the practice is just observing and being with, go for it. If you've practiced that enough and you're like, oh, I can really just let that thing talk to me, let that thing talk to you. Okay. So when we're ready, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share now before we start. Where's my stuff? Here we go. I'm going to mute myself while we go into tapping just to avoid any back noise. So when we're ready, go ahead and close the eyes down. We'll do 10 sets of tapping, probably with the time we have for maybe about a minute. Maybe we'll do five sets of tapping. I think will be good for today. So when you're ready, go ahead and close the eyes down. Let's just take a couple deep breaths in. Feeling that inhale, just fill the body. Maybe a nice exhale out of the mouth. Do that 2 more times. Big exhale out. And one more nice inhale. Big exhale out. And then just start to, as you have the eyes closed, use that breath to drop deeper into yourself. Maybe that's even just moving your gaze so that you can see inside the skull. Maybe that's moving your gaze to be in connection to the heart. And when you're ready, go ahead and notice the image of whatever represents your intention. Close that. We're going to go into our first set of tapping, okay? We'll take a deep breath in when you're ready to stop. Inhaling through the nose, letting that breath come out in whatever audible fashion it wants to. And when you're ready, moving over to pen and paper, and writing down what you noticed in that set. If you need more time to write, go ahead and pause the video when you're ready. let's go ahead and go into our next set of tapping. I forgot to mention, if you want to continue tapping after I say take a deep breath in, you are welcome to pause these recordings at any time in order to facilitate the length of tapping and writing that you want and need for your own inner journey in this experience. Okay. So when you're ready, go ahead, notice what you wrote for that last set. And let's go into this next set, holding that either at the crown, at the third eye, at the heart, outside of yourself, just witnessing and observing that information that came to you for this next set of tapping. Deep breath in when you are ready to stop. Again, nice inhale through the nose, letting that breath move and release in whatever way the breath wants to direct itself. Noticing any shifts in energy. Sometimes the mental image will change. Sometimes we'll get sensation. Sometimes we'll get sparks of energy. Sometimes we'll hear things, see things, sense things. All of that is very normal in this experience. We're tapping into an inner knowledge and remembrance of ourselves that redefines the way that we have been taught to see ourselves. When you're ready, moving to pen and paper, writing down what you took away from that last set. Sometimes the things that come may not make sense, and that's okay. Meaning the logical mind may not be able to put to words the experience of it. The images and the sensations and the knowledge that we receive is meant to be a guide for us as we journey deeper and deeper and deeper into our inner world. Because in that journeying, we are going to be able to free ourselves in a variety of different ways that the mind just doesn't have a construct for because it hasn't experienced it yet. And so, what I'm going to invite you to do is notice what came through for last set. If you would like to go back to the intention or the image, you are welcome to do that instead. But whatever it is you feel called to notice for this next set, go ahead. We'll go into another set, noticing that. Deep breath in when you feel ready to stop. And then pen and paper. I can't remember if I said that. You know, for this set, I apologize. This is what happens when I go on my little journeys with you guys. I start to receive a lot of information. So if you see me zone off, it's literally just the receiving that's happening. But when you're ready, go ahead and write down the things that came through to you for that last set. All right. For this next set, if you want to notice what stood out to you for the last one, go ahead. If you want to go back to the intention, I'm an active participant in the creation of my life. Is that what it was? Yep, I'm an active participant in the creation of my experience. Sorry, I went back to the part. You can go back to that. If you want to go back to the image that you started with, you can go back to that. Whatever it is you literally energetically feel called to explore, I want you to notice what is calling you inward for this next set. Deep breath in when you feel ready to stop. And letting that breath come out in whatever way. And moving to pen and paper, writing down what came through to you in that last set. Mm. Take just another moment for writing. Mm. For this final set, there's a couple slides that I want to go back, so we won't use the whole time of our remaining teaching because there's a couple slides I want to go over as far as integration and how to work with some of these pieces. But before we get there, I want you to look at the last 4 sets that you did. Go back to the intention. Go back to that question of what you're creating. And just see if there's a through line for you. See if there is an invitation, an expression, a stirring, an awareness, something that is there that you didn't see before. I'm going to invite you to notice that for your last set. If there is something else that you would rather notice, by all means, consider this final pose in yoga. Take what your heart and soul need. So if you would like to notice the through line of the last 4 sets, go for that. If there is something else that you feel called to, please listen to that. And we'll go into our last set. Deep breath in when you're ready to stop. I just want to say it's 11:11 right now. When you're ready, write down what you noticed for that last set. If there is anything that, additionally comes through as you write this final closing one, please do so. Sometimes when we have our last set, this protocol, this direction comes through unintendedly that we get to really honor and be with. So please take your time writing. if you are still writing and would like to pause the video, I just, with some of the time we have left, want to hop back into sharing my screen to just share a few integration practices and how you can work with this. So take some time after we close in just a couple minutes and just be with the information that came up. Like I said, if you want to call someone and share it with them, or even just speak out loud what came through, not only does it help us process something, but it sound our sound is the most healing thing available to us, and it does so many beautiful things to our blood, the cells in our body, the energy our body holds. And being able to even speak and say some of the things that come through can literally be you blessing yourself with the future, right? It can literally be you reaffirming what you are creating. I'm still in a moment with the last set that came through for me, so I apologize. But it's really powerful when we get to recognize the innateness, the vastness, the real truth that exists, both outside of us and inside of us. And like I said, when we go into the principle of correspondence next week, a lot of what we just spoke about in these first couple slides, I think, are just gonna just like be like jelly over the heart space. So be with what you wrote over the week. Come back to this, a couple times throughout the week, 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a lot. Um, some journal prompts that you can use. You don't have to use these. These are just, options. If you have other things you want to write or other ways that you want to work with this, by all means, please do. But if you would like a daily journal prompt or something to kind of hold the day, right, or reflect on, and we didn't necessarily touch on this quote in particular. Again, it will come in more into play next week. Now that I see the all in all and all in the all, right? Or you can even say, now that I see that I support the creation of my experience, which is the all in all and all in the all, what beliefs am I carrying that shape how I experience myself in the world? Right? Maybe that's just a prompt that you automatic write on to see what comes up. How do these beliefs shape what I'm experiencing? Are they working with or against what you said you're creating? All right, so just a couple ideas. Again, you don't have to take these if you don't want to. If they don't resonate. Maybe you even, instead use that intention at the beginning of every day, right? And your intention is I'm the creator, or I am part of the creation. I create the experience that I have. And then at the end of the day, you can reflect, what did I experience today that I supported the process of creation on? Maybe your journal prompt is on transmutation, right? And it's a deeper invitation to see where transmutation exists in all ways, all the time, right? Maybe you want to take another aspect of, right, even the all being unknowable, right? I know sometimes when we come up with things, or not come up with things, but come against things where it's like, oh wait, I don't get to understand that completely, right? Maybe your mind's like, I don't like that, right? I notice that a lot when it comes to planning for things, right? I want things to go exactly the way that I want it to go, even the caliber of my life. And for those that know, the universe tends to have a very different plan. Um, that yeah, we're not going to know everything before we embark. We're not going to know everything before we journey. So maybe your practice is, where was I okay not knowing something today? Where did I show up for myself and see that, yeah, I didn't know that piece of information and it still all turned out okay. All right. So just some ideas. And then another prompt, maybe potential evening reflection. Where did I see the principle of mentalism today, right? Where did you see yourself creating your experience today? Where did you see the all in something? Where did you see the spirit in something? Where did you see the magic in something? Where did you even see that within yourself? So, however you would like to incorporate journal prompts and evening reflection. Even just maybe you go and use what you wrote down, right? Maybe these reflections, maybe each day you read what you wrote down, and then your evening reflection is, where did I see these things at play today? Right? Or where was my invitation to move and embody, right? A deeper connection to what messages came through in the tapping. Just a final closing piece. Under and behind all outward appearances or manifestations, there must always be a substantial reality. This is the law. Man, considering the universe, of which he is a unit, sees nothing but change in matter, forces, and mental states. He sees that nothing really is, but that everything is becoming and changing. He sees all things evolving from other things and resolving into other things. The constant action and reaction and flow and outflow, build up and tearing down, creation, destruction, birth, growth, and death. Nothing endures but change. And if he be a thinking man, he realizes that all of these changing things must be but outward appearances or manifestations of some underlying power, some substantial reality. As I said, we will cover the principle of correspondence next week. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again. Hope you guys like the blue background. If you have any questions, this module is structured a little differently where I don't have the office hours at the end of the week. If that is something that, potentially wants, based on feedback, wants to be re-added, please let me know. And we can discuss that, bi-weekly or, at a time that works for most people. But you are always welcome to reach out and or use the Telegram group. We're going to be using that a lot more these next couple weeks, just as far as questions and integration. So if you have questions or you need to reach me, I'm available there, available via email. You know where to find me. Thank you so much for joining us today and journeying with us today. And I look forward to seeing you when we meet again.